Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a fascinating topic. Long context is not long horizon reasoning, an energetic paradigm perspective. We're going to objectively examine a fundamental structural challenge in the field of artificial intelligence right now. As models grow increasingly powerful, we hear constantly about massive leaps in context size, basically how much data an AI can take in at once. But today, we're moving beyond basic context size to understand true long horizon stability. We're going to take an academically grounded, yet accessible look at the real difference between simply reading large volumes of text and actually reasoning through complex problems over an extended process.
Here is our agenda for today. We'll start with why long horizon reasoning matters, then look at reading versus structure generating, followed by the autoregressive generation bottleneck. After that, we'll introduce the energetic paradigm, compare scaling versus structural organization, and finish up with the future of AI reasoning. Let's jump in.
Section 1. Why long horizon reasoning matters.
To begin, we really have to anchor our discussion in practical reality. This isn't just some abstract theoretical debate. It directly impacts how we deploy AI for high-level knowledge work. Many of our most important reasoning tasks aren't just short questions with quick answers. They involve massive bodies of information, multiple constraints, and long chains of dependency that absolutely must remain rigorously consistent over extended periods of time. Think about what it takes to draft a comprehensive research report or conduct complex legal analysis. What about designing long-term policy, writing a multi-volume narrative, or architecting a large technological system? These real-world challenges require an AI system to establish a premise at the very beginning and ensure those early conditions continue to logically influence the final conclusions thousands of words later, all without dropping threads or contradicting itself.
Section 2. Reading versus structure generating.
What's really interesting here is how this clarifies a widespread conflation of two very distinct technical capabilities in the AI industry today. We have to clearly separate reading from reasoning. On the left side, we have long-text reading. This is simply the ability to process and extract information from massive amounts of text. It just means the model can understand a very long input. On the right side, though, we have long-horizon reasoning. This is the ability to independently produce reasoning content that preserves a stable structure across an extended generation process. Processing huge volumes of data within a single context window is a fundamentally different capability than independently producing structurally coherent content from scratch across long distances.
Now, we must fairly acknowledge the immense and valuable progress that's been made by companies like Anthropic in expanding long-text reading capabilities. Their Claude series models, for instance, have context windows reaching hundreds of thousands or even millions of tokens. That is a remarkable technological advancement. It allows these systems to ingest vast amounts of information simultaneously, like complete books or extensive research datasets. For tasks involving data analysis, summarization, and cross-document understanding, this is incredibly effective and has substantial practical value. However, reading ability itself does not guarantee stable long-form generation.
Section 3. The autoregressive generation bottleneck.
This brings us to a crucial pivot in our analysis. We have to look at the mechanical limitations of current model architectures. Most large language models generate text autoregressively. What this means is that text is generated by predicting the very next token, or word, based on the existing context at that specific local step. It calculates the probability of the next word based purely on the sequence it has already generated. While this works beautifully for short texts, it means that long sequences lack an independent structural layer to maintain a global objective. The model is effectively walking forward one step at a time without a map of the entire journey.
So, the crucial point is that when a model relies on repeated local decisions over tens of thousands of tokens, real system-level limitations emerge. Early constraints often fade. You'll frequently see gradual structural drift, subtle concept drift, or the complete loss of long-range dependencies. Argument boundaries become unclear. The real risk here is that the text continues to sound perfectly fluent sentence by sentence, so it looks correct at a quick glance, but globally and structurally the argument actually falls apart. It's local fluency masking global inconsistency.
Section 4. Introducing the energetic paradigm.
To address these system-level limitations, let's look at a methodical alternative that moves away from pure sequence generation. We call this the energetic paradigm, or EP. It's a structured reasoning approach. At a high level, it doesn't treat long-horizon narratives as a simple sequence generation problem. It treats them as a complex structural network. And to be perfectly clear, in this context, the word energy is not a loose metaphor. It refers strictly to structured reasoning activity happening within interconnected units. The system transforms the process from pure language generation into structural computation. Here's how the EP framework actually operates. First, the system identifies the overall problem structure. Second, the problem is decomposed into interconnected reasoning units. Third, the relationships between those units are rigorously preserved. Fourth, the results are reconciled structurally. And finally, only after the reasoning stabilizes, the narrative is generated. By maintaining structural relationships before any text is actually written, the narrative becomes an output layer rather than the primary reasoning mechanism itself.
Section 5. Scaling versus structural organization.
Understanding this methodology allows us to draw a sharp methodological distinction. On the left side, long context scaling increases how much text a model can process. You get a larger context window, but you still have token-by-token generation, which leads to gradual drift. On the right side, the energetic paradigm changes how reasoning is organized. You start with the problem structure, move to interconnected units, and use structural coordination. Essentially, scaling expands capacity, whereas EP governs coherence. The potential advantages of the structural approach are incredibly relevant for those complex tasks we discussed at the start, like research analysis and policy evaluation. Because each unit remains firmly linked to the overall problem, you get firm preservation of early constraints and definitions. Consistency is maintained across numerous reasoning steps. You actually get structural detection of contradictions before the text is even generated, preventing the decay we see in long linear sequences. It enables the stable integration of complex dependencies. However, we have to note that its effectiveness relies entirely on rigorous decomposition and validation. If the initial problem structure is mapped incorrectly, the system simply won't function as intended.
Section 6. The future of AI reasoning. As we wrap up our analysis, we need to consider how these distinct capabilities will interact moving forward. We shouldn't view these as competing frameworks. Long context scaling handles the vital function of information processing, which is ideal for cross-document analysis and summarizing large data sets. Meanwhile, the energetic paradigm provides the structural control needed for complex logic preservation and extended narrative coherence. The most promising path forward is likely integrated systems. When combined, AI will be able to handle comprehensive knowledge work spanning both massive amounts of data and incredibly long time horizons.
And this brings us to our final conclusion. Long-horizon AI depends not only on context size, but on whether reasoning structure remains stable across the full task. As you evaluate the rapidly evolving landscape of artificial intelligence, and as you see new models boasting larger and larger context windows, ask yourself this: is the system merely reading more information, or is it fundamentally thinking better? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I hope it has brought some structural clarity to how we view the future of AI reasoning.